Hey guys, I got this workbook from a client today. He's a temp agency. I do software for temp agencies. It's very old software that I just maintain. A lot of times they want workbooks though, and then states require workbooks for different things. This guy's got like employees in like 20, 25 states or so. So anyway, he wants this form filled out by the software rather than him doing it manually. And I've developed some templates to let me do this pretty quick. So hopefully I can get this thing done in a half an hour. So it's basically what I'd like to title it is from query to workbook in 30 minutes. This one's a little bit different. That this is a table, so I might run into some little hiccups. I've never produced or written to a workbook that had a table in it. Let's see what happens. Now I've already got the query written, and this is the way it looks. Now employee sequence is a surrogate key, but I'm going to use that as the social security number, and I'm kind of mangling this last name and first name a little bit, using the first name for the last name and using the first letter of the last name for the first name, so to protect the PII for these guys. Let's look at the workbook. Okay, the workbook, I need to do social security number, first name, last name, independent contractor, which is a constant. It's always no. Opt-in individuals, always a Y. Year-to-date wages is the wages from the beginning of the year until the end of the period that they're reporting on. And wages this quarter are just what it says. And then the user wants to be able to input before they produce the workbook these values on the request screen. So I've got this form, I got this Excel workbook saved in what they refer to as their Excel directory, where they keep all their Excel files. They keep templates in there, and they also keep the output in there, which is probably not a good idea, but that's what they're doing. So this is the workbook. There's the name. And this is the query. And I usually do my development of new procedures in it's a multi-DLL app. I usually have this POSCST. CST stands for the company that used to own all this software, which was Computers something Technologies. I can't remember now. But anyway, okay, I just go and add a procedure for what I want to do. See what I want to call this. I'd say let's call this paid family medical leave for Massachusetts. So it'd be Massachusetts paid family medical leave. So let's add that. I'm just going to put it in as an item. Let's see. I'll put it right there. That's good. So it'll be Massachusetts paid medical leave. Family pay. Paid family medical leave report. I'll just say workbook. That's pretty big, but okay. Now what I got is a template procedure called Generate an Excel Workbook. I do not have one called Populate one, which is, so what I'm going to, and it's a single sheet, so this, I'm going to go with this, and what I'll end up doing is not producing a workbook. Well, actually I will. I'll use the workbook that they gave me there as a template. So let's, I think, let's look at the window. The window, I think, has just got dates in it right now. And what I'm going to end up doing is put first, second, third, fourth quarter dates right here, and then it'll just pre-populate these fields for them. Just so you know what all this other stuff is, this is a more or less template on here. Normally the screen that will show will be just from this box. And if you click on this more or less thing, then you get this drops down. And then this particular area is what I call a log. And I've always thought that the messages that you show a user as it's progressing would have been better done in a list form. So you show a list of things of what's happening. Also, if something screwy happens, you can get them to look at this to see if there's any error messages in it or anything like that. It's a little, I use it a lot for testing, but it's kind of like a log for testing and for user information. This is a progress bar that I use, and I'll do a status in here as it's progressing. And that's all part of this template. Okay, let's get out of that. And what I've got in here already is something that'll already work. So let's just see what that does. Oh yeah, that's the funny thing about it. I'm using Camtasia to record this, and Camtasia and Clarion do not get along too good. You can't move a window when you're recording with Camtasia. Okay, let's just click this and see what happens. All right, now this is showing you the workbook as it's doing this, but you don't have to do that. That's just what I do for debugging in the template, and then it closes it. It's supposed to bring it back up on top. So all this stuff looks like it's doing is producing an employee. I'm going to have to blur all this out, of course, so you won't be able to see who that is. But let's get rid of that and get rid of that, and then I'll probably just get rid of all of that anyway. But okay, so we got the template. Click embeds. First thing we want to do is put in the query. Now, I have what I call a timed state manager template in here also, and it's used for going through different states. This is the initializing state, this is an error state, processing state, terminate state, cleanup state, and the idle state, which is the state it's normally in before anything happens, and it's flagged by dormant. And then I got these other things which has to do with the Excel that we'll be working with. But the main thing we want to look at right now is the SQL. Now, I've used dynamic SQL from Clarion. I like it a lot. And then I got this template here for actually putting in the SQL. So let's look at one. This is one of them. This is you can put multiples in here, of course. Just call this the guts. This is where I usually put the guts of the SQL. This right here will like polish it up. It'll come clear in a second. Also keep the SQL statements in here, and you can have multiple versions of it. And so if you ever make a change to the SQL, well, let's just do that. Let's pretend we're going to change the SQL, but we want to save the old copy of it. So we hit insert, and it makes a copy of it. And then you put in active, and then we're just going to call this original because we'll get rid of the other one. And this is the query that we just ran. And this is the query we want to run. So let's get this and paste it. Oh, I got to get rid of that thing. Let's see, where's that? Get rid of that. Close it. There we go. And then we paste it in here. Now, we got a problem right off. Well, aside from all these tabs, let's get rid of all these tabs. It's a new machine. I usually have my editor set up so it doesn't do these screw up with these tabs. Okay, so this is my query. Now I'm going to have to do something a little weird because Dynamic SQL does not allow you to have these correlated subqueries. So what they call them, the CTEs. Common table expressions. Doesn't let you have common table expressions. I've been complaining to them for years on this. All the other drivers allow it, but not the dynamic SQL one. So anyway, we got to work around that. So I got to take this CTE and make it a separate one. So let's OK this and OK that and copy it. And let's go back to the original. And we're going to just use this part of the CTE first. And we're going to store that in, can we store it in SQL string? I think we can. But what I like to do is store it whatever the CTE name was what I like to do. So let's create CTE. Oh, I can't do copy in here. That's right. Let's call it CTE, and we're going to call it, what was it? Year to date. So we'll call it year to date. It's going to be a C string, and we'll make it 4,000 on to cover it. All right, there's year to date. And we're going to put it here. This is where it really goes, right here. If I was adding to this SQL, I would append it to the variable. Append this, whatever's in here, to this variable. So that's what this is for. I have a class called user var class type that is used for evaluating strings within braces. I'll show you that in a minute also. And if you're going to use that, then you would put it here and it would do the evaluation for it. If you actually wanted to execute the SQL, then you would use this, but we're not. We're just populating it right now. So we're populating this year-to-date variable with the query that's in here. And that looks like, when it's generated, I'll show you what it looks like. This is one of the first things I developed when I was started doing SQLs. I hated that have to actually code the embedded SQL. So all it does is create a string, stick it into the year-to-date thing. I have carriage return line feeds way out here on the side, so that way if you do a set clipboard and then a message to clipboard, you will get the actual SQL that was happening. And there's a shortcut that you can do to, or a backdoor that you can do to actually see that at any time. So let's get rid of that. Let's get out of that. All right, so there's the guts. All right, now let's go back to the other query, the original query. And this is where I use that evaluation thing. So I can now replace year to date here with curly brace year to date as year to date, and then get rid of this with up here. So that's my workaround on using common table expressions with dynamic SQL. This curly brace, open curly brace, closed curly brace, is used in my user var class. It will take whatever's in YTD and expand it. So that means, also we need this in parentheses. Yep, that's right. In parentheses. So this should work. So we click OK here. And it's going into a variable called SQL string, and we need to evaluate it. And I believe we already have a variable in here. Yeah, there it is, UVR. I usually call it UVR for user variable class, variable UVR. Okay. So that's all good. And then the final SQL is the one that polishes it up and does some interesting things to it. So I'm going to show you that. Okay, this is properties. Okay, and then it's going into, there's a SQL string right there. It's producing it. The template requires a few columns that are sequential numbers. The first one is a row number. It's just the number of rows left in the query as you're processing it, but that includes the current row or the row you're processing at the moment. So it's not. It's really a misnomer. Rows left is really the row you're on in rows left. This is very similar, rows left in sheet, because rows left has to do with how many rows are in the query, and there might be multiple sheets worth of data in there. So this is rows left in the sheet, and this is row in sheet. And we're not going to be basing this on the employee. We're going to be basing this on the social security number. So let's change that. Social security number. And these can be multiple. I'm using SQL Anywhere for this. Okay, so that works there. Now this is the one that actually does execution. So this is a procedure, a common procedure I have called get file from SQL, which basically passes SQL into the routine and returns a file that is built from that SQL using dynamic SQL. Dynamic, was it dynamic files? What's that called? Can't remember. This is a file I've declared called infile. If I want to put a prefix on it, I put it there. This is the buffer, which is really just a group. Then the owner of the file and a procedure name. And then this is some code that I'll put in there for the time state manager in case if it runs into an error. So, right. Okay, so now we got the SQL done. This is my Excel, one of my Excel things. This Excel object class that I use, that I created. Let's see what's in here. We got the variable that will be of type Excel object class. These are the options that you can check, like if you want to debug it, I'll get in that later. Make Excel on top so you can see it as it's populating. Make Excel visible. When it's a finished product, usually all four of these are shut down. And then I'll terminate what you should do when the procedure terminates, which is make visible and leave workbook open. If something happens and it crashes, what do you want to do with the workbook? You trash it. That's what we got set up so far. Now, scribe is a scriber class that goes with that log I was telling you. The scriber class that I wrote a long time ago just writes to that log. It writes in color. It can write over the same line over and over again if if it matches, if you can do a match on it on that row. I'll show more of that later too. So that just creates the object. And then this one's the one we use a lot, or I use a lot, the send commands. This is where we send commands to the workbook. And this is what really makes this thing so powerful, I think, is that you just got the same version control like you do with a SQL. This is the same thing with the evaluator. It'll evaluate the commands and assignments, and then you can put your actual Excel statements in here. So what we want to do is we're going to create a workbook, but we want it based on that one that I was talking about earlier. So let's go ahead and find some. This is cheat sheet code down here. So we want to do an add on a workbook, and we want to use a template. So let's take this guy here. Now we could use one of these and see this is being evaluated. See the braces around it. So if I got a workbook template and I want to allow them to pick the template, then I can use this. And I actually do that all the time, really, because I save the variable. So should we go ahead and do this? I think we'll go ahead and do this. Workbooks template. No, it's not. Let's just do what is in the directory. So it's the PXL. And this is the template right here. This is the one we created a while ago in that test run. Okay, so workbooks add range A1 select. I think that's A3 is what we want. A3 select. And we end that. And now, what we need to do is come up with these variables and test the query, make sure it works. So what we do here is we just go back and compile it and run it, and then we use a backdoor to get some information that we can use to populate the workbook. So we run it. And get up here with this. And then if you hold down the control key and hit OK, it will give you copy a series of things into your clipboard and show them to you. So the first thing they're going to do is show you the query. So I'll hold the control key down and click OK. This is the evaluator found an error, and it's because I did not do a bind on the year-to-date thing. So if I wanted to continue with it, I could get rid of it and it would evaluate okay, but that query is not going to run. So I'll just close it and it's going to give me an error. Oh, it's giving me the query before it gives me the error, and I already see a problem there. I got a semicolon there. I need to get rid of that. Now it's giving me the error because I tried to execute it. I'll answer no. Let's get rid of this. All right, so I need to bind the year-to-date. Then I need to get rid of the semicolon. No semicolon there. See, this is the old one there, so you can look at the different ones. And then you can mark which one you want to be the one you use by making it the active one. It's a little aside there. All right, that's the guts. Actually, this is year-to-date. Let's change that so we won't get confused. This is year-to-date. CTE. This is the guts, and this one's got a semicolon in it. We need to get rid of that. And then we need to get to this. I think this was all right. This was all right, yeah. So we're all good here. All right, let's try it again. Control key. Okay, there's the query. Now we can take that. The query is in the clipboard, so I can take it over here to this SQL doohickey, and I can run it. And there's what I'm looking for right there. It's got the rows left. The rows left in sheet. Since one sheet, no problem. And row in sheet. Now, if you got more than one sheet, then there's also a sheet name thing that's required, but I don't have it in the single thing. So you got rows left in sheet, and row in sheet, and then down at the bottom. So one counts down, one counts up. And then the nice thing about doing it this way, though, is you always know if you're on the first or last row in your set. So, all right, so the query works fine. Let's click OK again. Now this is the Clarion file layout. And if you wanted to, you could create a group that looks like this, and your query could populate it, and then you could just use those fields like you would in the fields in a file. I don't like doing that though, because I'm kind of develop iteratively, and it's a lot of work to actually keep on putting stuff in the group. But anyway, it does let you know what things look like, and you can also see if something, like sometimes you might get a blob because of the way you've developed your query, and it'll show up in here as a blob, or a clob, and you can see that you need to cast it as something smaller so that you can get it into the record. So that's why I got that in here, actually, is for that reason. Okay, and you click OK, and then it gives you this, which is you can be used in the Excel send commands. I forgot what it's called, but Excel send commands to actually populate the workbook. So we want that. So let's put that over here. It's kind of big. Let's see if I can get these text smaller. There we go. And there we go. It's starting to populate. Now, it's populating, and it started 1, 2 far down, so I need to do a select on A2 if I don't want to change any other code. And the error messages we're seeing here are the what you get when you evaluate a variable and it's a not defined variable. It just echoes back what the variable was that it couldn't find. So it can't find, let's look up here. It can't find employee, can't find city, can't find state, and can't find zip code 1, because that's what it was in that old query. You know, what we want to do is use this new stuff that we to use this command first unprotected. Oh yeah, that's because they got Massachusetts got this sheet protected, so I'm trying to do some weird stuff to it that can't be done. So let's get rid of that. This is, we saw the progress thing that I got here. This is the let's get rid of that. This is the more or less thing, and also the script. Now, what I usually do with Excel is I echo back the commands that I send to it, and sometimes I get errors. This autofit probably was because it was a protected sheet. Auto filter, probably the same thing. Next time I run it, I'll drop this more or less thing so you can see it as it's doing it. Okay, so now what we need to do is go back. We need to move that cell up 1. So instead of A3, we need to be A2, and we need to take this code and stick it in at the appropriate place. So let's go back to the embeds. We created the workbook. That worked all right. We created a workbook based on the template. What we want to populate the line, that code that I just showed right here goes in the populate line code. So we bring that up, and this is the old one. So we want to replace the old one with this new one. And we don't want, now the way this stuff works is it makes a line for each line on this, in this text box. It makes a line in the source. If it has a vertical bar, it treats it as a clarion statement. So this is a statement we're sending to Excel. We're sending it to Excel at the current active cell, offset by whatever is in the row number variable, or that the evaluator will change into a number. And then usually you put what you want to populate that cell with out here, but I'm kind of tricking it a little bit. I'm telling it I want to continue, and then I put a comment, and then these are just clarion statements because I got a vertical bar there. And then you can use a colon or a vertical bar as the first character on a line to say, okay, this isn't an Excel statement, this is a clarion statement. So let's just go ahead and okay this and have a look at it so you can see what it looks like. Okay, so we're at row number plus equals 1. So here's the code right here. So we got Excel. This is the class, the instance of the class Excel. I'm telling it to evaluate the commands, so which means look at anything with the curly braces in it and change it into whatever the variable is that's defined in the UVR. And normally it would do this, but see, I put this comment statement in here, this continue statement here, and a comment here. So this is kind of like cheat code, really. So I could be a little bit more slick with getting these variables in. And then these are clarion statements clarion string statements, basically. It takes the value of whatever's in rows left and then puts a tab on it, and then value in rows left in sheet, puts a tab on it, and then row in sheet and puts a tab on it. Now we don't want those, because what we want is social security number, first name, and so forth. So let's go back. Excuse me. Go back in here, and we're going to, you don't need them. Now they are used, they're used in here. You use it row in sheet equals 1, then we know we would put code in here that we do for the first row. And then down here, if rows left in sheet equals 1, that means we're on the last row, so we do this stuff. So right now we're not doing anything right here. We're populating a line. We got that out. Let's get rid of, we're not going to want to put any finished detail. This is stuff like where I put headings in and columns and a lot of other stuff that you would normally do for a report, but we're not doing that for this situation. So let's just take a look at it. Let's see what I'm talking about. Okay, in this particular one, I'm just selecting the A2. I'm doing basically selecting all the text from A2 down to the last row. And then I'm doing, oh, no, it's just that one column. Yes, from A2 all the way down to the bottom, and then I do text to column. So I'm expanding everything that's in the first column into the other columns. This makes producing these reports a lot faster when you do that. You put them all in the first cell as tab separated, and then use this text to columns to expand all those tabs into the other cells. So you're actually just writing to one cell for one row all the way down. And I'll show that to you so you can see what it looks like if you're not aware of it. So this one we need. We got to leave this one in there. Let's see. Was there anything we need to take out though? No. Well, we don't want to start at A2. We want to start at A3. So let's do A3. Format the report. We can't format the report because it's a protected sheet. But basically, this is where I put all the titles on, set the print headers and the margins, change the colors and stuff. It's just where I polish it. Part of polishing it, and we don't need that at all. So let's get rid of it. Well, it's not polishing. It's formatting the report. This is the polishing. And I don't think we can do any polishing either. Well, the only thing we're doing is selecting the second cell down on A3. Let's change it to A3 because that is the first row. Last thing we need to do is send commands to finish up. And to finish up, all that we're doing here is saving the workbook, which we don't want to do. We just want to leave it open. So let's get rid of that. And then if it's hidden, a hidden Excel workbook, what we want to do is minimize it and make it true, and then normalize or make it normal again so it'll show up and the user can see it. Because normally they don't see it as it's being built, but we're watching it being built because that's what we do when we're debugging. And then Excel terminate. Now, so the state, before I do it one more time, let me show you the time state manager, how that works. It's an extension to the procedure. And basically what I have is what you go in, you create this, you start from left to right. Usually you start with a state diagram. Most of the time these states are so similar now that I don't use a state diagram, but I have all the events that you're going to use, you put in here. End of file, error event, and a continue event. Then down here you have what the default event is at the end of the state. If it's and the default here is continue. Most of the time continue means go to the next state, or if it's something like a process and it's going to go back into the process again. I mean, you hit a continue event when you run out of time because it's a timed state manager. So you stay in a state for a particular length of time. This 25 1/100ths of a second or a quarter of a second is how long you stay in a state. This allows you to cancel these things pretty easy. So I'm probably not doing a very good job explaining it. So anyway, so you got a default event and a common error event. So when you're in any state, if an error event happens, then it takes you to the error state. And where does that happen, or where do you tell it to do that? It's right here on the state. So we got an initializing state, an error state, a processing state, a terminate state, a cleanup state, and an idle state. And the idle state is a state you start off in. There is a terminate state, but I don't usually use that. The initial state, this is where you tell it where to start in the state diagram. So you'll start with idle, and then what the error state is. So this is what state you'll go to if you ever throw an error. See the active. Let me see what that is. I can't remember. Oh, it's either an active state or a dormant state. What I meant to say is, what is this over here where they ignore? Oh, this has to do with ignoring the controls. Auto disable controls on state entry. Auto enable controls on leaving state. So what I got it set up so that you disable when you start these states, time state things. You can disable all the controls on the window so people can't be messing with it as it's processing, or you don't have to do that. That's just the way I do it. So auto disable controls on state entry. So when it enters a state, it would automatically disable some controls. So like when you go into the initialized state from the idle state, you would disable some controls so they can't mess it with them. And then you can auto enable all controls on leaving the state. So let's look at what we got here. So right here we got when you're in the idle state and you're leaving it, you disable the controls. So you're initializing all these, you ignore the controls, you don't do anything to them. And then when you go through cleanup, you re-enable all the controls. And you do the controls here. So we'll get to that. So all right, the transitions is where you go from state to state. So you can start, I haven't got these organized like hierarchically or anything. So the way you idle state, which is what you stay in until you poke the state manager. So you got idle state, you poke it, and it gets the continue event, which takes it to initializing. Initializing when it hits a continue event, it goes to processing. Processing when it's a continue event, goes back to processing. Processing when it's into file, goes to terminate. Terminate when it hits continue, it goes to cleanup. If it goes to error, it does some processing and continue, and then it goes to cleanup, and cleanup goes to idle, go back to idle. Here's the controller. This is the control we put with, the OK. This is the event we send to the state, continue. This is what we put on the poked control while it's running, cancel, and we use this W4 cancel.icon. When it's finished, it puts finish in the control, and the icon is the close icon. And then if you cancel the state while it's processing, then you say processing cancel. And when if the state processes data, there's some extra stuff here. It's for the progress bar. User string, what the user string is, because the state manager can post text to the user string or put text in the user string. What the progress control is named. What state initializes the progress control. What state manages the processing control or progress control. And a countdown value. Instead of counting up, a count down, and it's the value of rows left. Disablement. These controls are automatically excluded from general disablement. This is the OK button, the progress thermometer, and the progress user string. And then all of these are disabled unless you click on them. And I wanted to allow them to click on the more or less button while it's processing, while the state manager is working, and also wanted to see the log queue, which is in that bottom window. And then some code sheets. I won't even get into that, but that's the time state manager. Okay. All right. So let's see what we got now. Let's clear these errors out. All right, okay, and we'll drop this so you can see what's happening as we're doing it. So click OK. So we're initializing, that's in initializing state. There we just populated. Let's bring that up. So what we did was we just populated this first cell on every row. And it looks like it's not going to let me do that. Nice command to populate all the cells from that one cell. Populate all the cells on a row from the one cell on the far left. It looks like that is not allowed. That's why I got that error message. Yep, and you can say right here, this is what it's trying to execute right now is text to columns, and it's failing because of this message box. So it might come back with a green, but nope, it was red. So that didn't work. That was the only thing that didn't work. So, well, it won't let me move this thing either. There we go. So that's the only thing that didn't work. So that means we got to populate each cell rather than one cell and then doing a text to columns to get it expand out. But it works really nice on the other workbooks. So let's kill this and close this, and we'll go back and populate each cell instead of populating just that one cell. So we can go embeds, populate line. Oh, let's pretend that it's going to be available in the future, that we'll be able to unlock it or something. So we'll create a new copy of it. Okay, so what we got is, I want to go to somewhere where I can use a macro. And what we want to do is have active cell offset row number 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and so forth. So we want it to look like this. Now, when you send something to Excel using this class, if it doesn't see a double quote here, then it assumes it's a clarion statement. If you use a double quote, it assumes it's some an Excel literal or whatever. So this is basically sending the value of the Social Security number to row number whatever cell 0 over 0. So this would be A, column A. So we want this over and over again. Let's see, let's do it like this. I'm going to record a macro. Active cell dot offset row number, comma, we'll leave nothing in there, dot value equals value, and then we don't want that. Let's not do that, let's do it like this. And there, in the macro, and let's just repeat that. And let's go in and put our numbers. I want this to be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is probably a cleaner example for a cleaner demo of what we should be doing anyway. So I still got a bunch of spaces in there. Yeah, that's weird. All right, I'm not gonna worry about it right now. Normally I'd clean this up. It's a little bit messy doing this, but make that the active one. And now, oh, got to get rid of the text to columns command. That was in finish detail sheet. Yep. So we can get rid of that whole thing. We don't need any of this, so let's just delete it. And I think that'll do it. Oh, we didn't format the social security number. All right, well, let's go ahead and see what it looks like anyway. All right. It's a lot slower. And then there's our workbook. Now we got to fill in that information. Got to format social security number. And then we'll be done. I'm not going to do the button things. That's just window dressing, but I will go ahead and put these two fields on there where they need to be called medical community. Let's just copy this stuff. It won't let me copy it. Really? Government. All right. So we'll call that a medical contribution deducted from employee. Medical contribution deducted from employee. Oh, well, that's right. This is kind of cool. I don't know if y'all know you can do this or not. Medical contribution deducted from employee. And we'll call it so via C string. Make it. Let's make it. Just make it 10. And then we also could make it a number, but I don't know what he wants to put in here. So another one is, well, that's percent of medical contribution. And the other one is percent of family contribution deducted from employee. Family contribution is percent of. So you can take these, you can take that and then just come over here and paste it in, which is kind of cool. And then you can just drag it to your window. There's a problem with using this box thing, is that you can't drop variables on it. So I have to drop them outside and then move them. Okay, so we got those two things. Now we need to bind them. And I can't remember what it. Oh. Got them over here. I don't know if y'all know this or not. Windows 10, you can do this paste using Windows V instead of Alt V or Control V. And if you do that, then you can pick which one you want. It kind of keeps a history. So we want that one. Well, let's see. Was it not showing up? Oh, it's percent of, yeah. Okay, so there's that's a long variable. Let's put the other long one in there. Good grief. All right, so we got those in there. All right. I'm going to copy them from over here since I got them wrong in the first place. So copy details. No, I just need to copy. All right. Now, in addition to binding them, we have to use the UVR to set the values. And we can do that, well, we could do it about anywhere, but let's just do it on the very first, inside the very first row, processing the very first row, right before we populate. We will UVR.set, and we will call it, let's see, do it like that. We're going to call it the same name. So we're setting a variable, UVR variable, called that, and the value is that. And let's do the same thing for this. I know there's probably better ways to do this. All right. Now we go to the populate line. Let's create a new version just for fun. And then we're going to take we're going to do that and do that. Put the curly brace in. Curly brace. Quote. Oh, you don't need a curly brace on this. That's right. Value of, you don't use curly brace. If you do a UVR.eval, then you can do like a string and then put the curly braces, and the curly braces will expand out. That's what we use for the SQL. But if you're using the value of function, which is just this common function IF, or getting the value of an evaluation, but with some error handling in it, it'll return, if you do value of something that's not defined, then it returns that variable name instead of returning an empty string and throwing an error. It'll say ERR colon and then the variable name. Okay, so we're going to populate row 7 and row 8 with, we got those backwards. The medical is first and then the family. 7, 8. This is probably stuff y'all don't need to know because it's just finishing up what I was working on for this guy. I got to do some more well, I'll show you that part. That'll help. All right, so there are the variables. Let's say if one's 1.0% and the other one is 1.5%. And let's go with it. See what it looks like. You won't believe how much faster it is when you can do that text to columns, if y'all don't know about that. Okay. Look at that. It only allows, yeah, well, that's his problem. I don't think I can mess with the formatting. I don't think they want me to anyway. So whatever my client enters is going to go in there. I forgot to format the social security number. So let's do 2 more things and then I'll be done. We're going to actually put these ranges in, and it's in the query, and that's all we need. Just these ranges. Okay. Yeah. All right. So those variables, to make it just easy, is from date and through date. They were in the original. So we go to the embeds, and it's in the year to date and it's in the guts. What we need to do. So we need to do an evaluation. So we need UVR in here. It needs to evaluate whatever it's sticking into the YTD string before it does it. So we turn we give it a UVR class or the object, and then we come in here and we want from date. Actually, we want, it's always January the 1st here because this is year to date. So we want the year for the from date. So what we do is we get rid of this, put in the curly braces, and then we say year from date. And that will put the year in for from date. And then for the end date has to be the actual through date. And we want it formatted. So we want it a format, curly brace, format, from date, through date, comma, at D010-B, which will give us a date that looks like this, and it'll be blank if it's empty, which probably wouldn't be good, but that's what I do. So it's format through date. So it's year 0101 and format through date. So that's taken care of for the YTD part. All right, close that. And then we'll go to the guts, and we got to do something similar to the guts. We've got to put the actual from date. So this would be curly brace, format, from date, comma, at D010-B. And brace, format, through date, comma, at D010-B, close parentheses, close brace. Let's put a space in here just for fun. And we don't have any other stuff we have to work with. We've got the YTD there. Okay, so click OK. We want to evaluate it, so it's got a UVR, so that's good. And then that one's already evaluated. So let's look at what this UVR thing does to the SQL that we're putting in there. Okay, so this is the YTD thing. So normally what we had before we put the UVR in there, it says YTD equals and then this literal string. But what I'm doing with the UVR is I'm doing the UVR.eval. Now what UVR does is it goes through the string and replaces all the open curly braces with evaluation of what's inside it and puts it back into the string. And it's not without its problems. I've had some issues with it, especially with things with like double quotes and stuff. But it's ways of working around it. But it helps out a lot when I'm doing stuff like this. Okay, so this is the setting the SQL to the YTD, and I'm using the curly braces. So it takes this query, stuffs it in YTD with these expanded out, from date through date expanded out. Then this string is evaluated with UVR, taking whatever's in YTD and sticking it inside those parentheses and evaluating these things and stuffing them in there, and then sticking that into the SQL string. And then this final thing puts all this stuff that we're required, that the procedure requires, row numbers, the sequential numbers, and expands SQL string into this area. So we'll look at that query one more time, and then let's format the social security number. But basically, it's not a big deal because y'all know how to do that. But I need to do it because this is real stuff. All right, populate line, pop. Okay, we want to format social security number at p pound dash pound p close parentheses. Is there anything else we want to do? No, we can't format any of the cells. Sometimes I do that when I'm doing a new book. I'll have a part of the routine will be to go format all the cells and stuff. So but I think that's good. Oh, let's also, since we're pretty close to finish, let's go ahead and turn all these things off. And run it. Right, we want to go from the beginning of the year. Oh, this is another little template of mine. It's a drop down calendar. Yeah, I should show you this too, I guess, because you might want to see a demo of this. Let's see. It's got a lot of little handy little features on it. Like this is like previous month, next month, previous year, next year. And these are drop downs, so if you want to skip head to a different month, you can do it. And then also with the years, you can do the years here. You can also, this is today, this will just plug today in, and this will erase the date. You can actually see the date change up here, which is kind of cool, I think. But like if you use your arrow, you can use your left arrow. Let's get rid of the, see, that's May. You can use your left arrow, and it actually changes the date up here as you're doing it. It's pretty cool. So we want to go to 6:30. You can go up, down, left, right. You can also click and drag up here to scan through dates, and then once you get to the date, the month you want, you can come down here and just drop on the date you want, and it'll plug it in. So, but we want to go to June the 30th. So we're on November. So let's go backwards to June and then drop down to 30, and there we are. Now let's change this to 1% and this to 2%. And we're going to watch it and then click OK. And here's your workbook. your social security number, names, dollars, percentages. It's good to go. He can save it wherever he wants it. And sometimes when they're doing, when they will save it, as in they will want it saved already, and I can do that for them. And the template kind of handles that too. Also, I wanted to show you the reason that I kind of did this progress bar thing different is because I really hate the fact that Clarion, first of all, Clarion doesn't show you what the real row count is. The progress bar usually doesn't work right. It doesn't usually really show you the real progress. And as it's working, I find it very difficult to get it to cancel. So with this time state manager, since you're every quarter of a second, your control is coming back to the window, it's not that hard to cancel. So let's do that. So I click on OK. Starts processing. Now I can click on this and cancel it. And when it cancels, it just cancels. And if you remember this in the template, it says, what do you want me to do with the workbook when you cancel? It was trashing. So the workbook is trashed. But I can start it all over again by clicking OK again. So cancel again. Cancel. And let's do it one more time just to get it for real. And you can see this, you can see, wow, we hit that right out of there. You can see what I mean by that. This log thing, it writes the status of what it's doing in Excel. The first time it writes it, it's in orange because it doesn't know whether it's going to be an error or not. And then if it's an error, it goes to the next one and it turns it red and goes to the next one. If it's successful, it rewrites it as green and then goes to the next one. So let's look at that again. It didn't run into your errors on this one, so that's good. And then there's your workbook. Now you can, you should be able to, let's get rid of this. You should be able to start working on this and then actually drop it down while it's processing too, and drop it back up. That's it. Let's see how long it took. I think it did 45 minutes, so it's not really half an hour. I could probably get it done down in a half an hour though if I planned ahead. So.